Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to attempt to put a nickel plating finish on this entire pistol. If you want to see that happen and how I do it, stick around. Welcome back. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to put nickel plating on the brass frame area and the steel portions, and I'm also going to dress it up just a little bit by putting a fire blue on the screws and the trigger. The hammer, I'm not quite sure yet what I'm going to do. I might leave it blued, because trying to look down the barrel with a shiny hammer, and that's your rear sight, with a shiny barrel and a shiny front sight could be a challenge. So I might leave it dark to give it contrast to be able to pick up the front sight a little bit easier. But why don't we get cracking at it and see how it turns out. All right, to start, we're going to have to take this gun completely apart. Here's just a simple breakdown. Taking the cylinder off, taking the barrel assembly off. Here's the pin. It just has a spring that holds it on, which you can loosen that screw and take it out. Every part of this gun is coming off. We're taking every single screw off, and the grips, and everything internally. Once that's done, we're going to polish everything to our liking. So the better you can get a polish on this, the brighter you're going to get with your nickel too. So let's go ahead and start doing that. That'll be the next thing. All right, ladies and gents, here is the entire gun taken completely apart. All the nipples are taken out of the cylinder. Every screw is removed that we can possibly remove. I used one screwdriver, this one. The reason why I use this one is because it's very thin. I have a nice grip to it. You can use gunsmithing screwdrivers too, which is just fine. This one just happened to work very well for me. I used one other tool, which is this tool. Now, this tool has a screwdriver on it that you could use as well if it fits. If you're questioning whether or not the screwdriver is working properly and you doubt it, get a different screwdriver. You get one chance at these screws. If it slips, you mess up the slot and you're going to feel kind of bad about that. So what did I use on this? I used the other side. This piece here is what takes out the nipples. It just slips right over the top. It's got this nice little bar that slides back and forth so you can get a good grip on it, spin it, and take them out. So here it is complete. Now that it's all apart, we're going to evaluate what we're going to finish. So some of the internal parts I'm going to leave alone. We have an internal screw. We'll never see that. It's being left alone. We have a spring. I'm not touching that. Some of the outer stuff we'll do. So the screws that are on the outside, we're definitely going to do. Any parts that you see too that are kind of dull, we're going to polish those up as well. So here's the trigger guard. Trigger guard looks good where they can get to it, but they didn't finish it up where they couldn't because it takes too much time. So what we're going to do for them basically and for ourselves is I'm going to get in here and I'm going to polish this up real nice, or at least the best I can. And I'm going to put this on a buffer also and get all these nice spots and make it smooth and pretty. The reason why you want to do that is because when the nickel attaches to the metal, if it's rough, it's not going to hide this. It's going to lay right over the top and make it look dull. If you want that, that's fine. There's no problem with that. But if you want the whole thing to look nice and shiny and pretty, you're going to have to polish everything. So the hardest part about this entire project is the prep work, just like 90% of the projects out there. So why don't we get cracking? The next step that we're going to do prior to polishing though, is we're going to clean all of this. What I'm going to use to clean it is I'm going to use some simple green. Spray it down, brush it off, get all the oil off, make sure it's completely off so it doesn't ruin your solution, and then go from there. All right, so what I started with is just the brass parts, but the brass parts in this cleaner. The cleaner is simple green and a splash of Dawn dish soap. I'm just getting all the grease and oil off. I'm going to start with the brass parts first because they are softer metal and easier to polish, and I'll show you what we need to do next after we clean these. All right, once your parts are cleaned and dried, we're going to put them on the buffing wheel. And what I'm going to use is this White Rouge. I use the red for parts that have a lot of imperfections in the metal and stuff, and to get that smoothed out. But to put a nice polish on here, we're going to use the white one. So with this, just beware because brass is really soft. Whenever you're doing polishing, whether it's with sandpaper or even with a wheel, you want to take your time and make sure you don't spend too much time on these sharp edges. They need to stay sharp. If you ever find a firearm that you're looking into to see whether or not it's been refinished and you find these sharp corners rolled over, it's a telltale sign that it's been redone. So take your time, make sure this just gets touched. All we're going to do is run this on here just enough to get this polish up nice and bright, and we'll see what it looks like in just a sec. So here we go. We'll give it a little rouge. Now as soon as you put the rouge on, you might get some stuck in these holes, so that's okay, we'll clean it out later. But you don't have to push real hard. There's nothing really on here that has to be worked out. It's just touching up to make it nice and shiny. So here we go. Check that out. I'm not pushing hard, just touching it. There's a little bit of the rouge that came off here from warming up and transferring over, but you can see how nice and shiny that is. I'm going to do one more spot for you to show you real quick. Right in here, just remember it was dull in here. I took some sandpaper, some 1400 grit to try to get this down and make it smooth, nice. I'm going to run it right in here real quick and we'll show you a difference. All right, so again, by just touching it, I had a little bit more transfer back on here, a little bit of that rouge, and wiped it off, but you can see what a difference. So we're going to finish up all the brass parts the same way, just touch them real light until they're nice and shiny clean like that, and we'll take off all this extra rouge and make sure they're clean to get them ready for the dipping process. All right, now we're ready to put some parts into the solution. If you're curious about how to make the solution, go to Snappers Antique Firearms Unlimited, or SNAFU, and he's got a great video on how to make the solution. I'll put a link for this down below. So what we have here currently is the positive side hooked up to a couple pieces of nickel plating, or I'm sorry, nickel anodes. And on the other side, I have a wire with a connector, the negative connector, onto this piece of brass. So we can see that this piece of brass is polished up real nice. It's got a real nice reflection to it. So I took all the markings and such out. I am setting this at 12 volts, and we're going to turn this on, and let's see how it does. All right, it's fizzing away. Keep that out. Now anything that goes in here on the negative side is also going to be plated, so just to give you a heads up. And the closer it gets to the positive side, the faster it'll start to bubble. The further away, the less it'll bubble. The more voltage you put into it also, the less time. The less voltage, the more time. But you just have to be aware as to how much voltage you put on, because there's a little sweet spot in between that snappers will talk about actually to show you what works best, because it could be either too thin or too thick, or actually it could be too thick but it could flake off real easily too, is the problem. So this is bubbling really well. Let's pull this up real quick, and wow, I don't know if you guys can see that, but there we go. It's actually attaching quite well. Looks very nice. It's a little dull, which is fine. We'll leave it in here for a little bit longer and we'll get a better plating. Let's continue this. Now I got the power system off of Amazon, and it wasn't too much. You can get them for about $50, and it worked very well to create the solution, by the way. All right, it's a couple seconds more. Now, there's a lot of bubbles coming off, so you want to stir it around to make sure those bubbles don't stick, because if they do, they can leave little craters in your finish. Well, look at that. That was just, I mean, not but a couple seconds, really. And that's turning out quite well. I'm going to go ahead and finish this, and then we'll show you the final product, and we'll start putting it back to. Actually, I'll finish the brass, and then we'll do the steel, and I'll show you the difference between the two. All right, what we're going to start off with is this barrel piece. I've done some work to it. I took off the black powder markings and stuff, just to clean up the barrel. And we're going to hook up the negative lead to this side here. Let's find a good place for it. Looks like that'll work right here, so we'll just wrap this in. Make sure it has good connection, like so. I have the power supply at 12 volts currently, and we have over here on the positive side I have two pieces of nickel pieces, and as you can see the solution is a nice green color. So let's turn this on. There we go, and let's see what happens. It looks good, and here it goes. Okay, I am getting a little bit of fizz out of it, which is good. That's what we want to see. Let's scooch this just a little bit closer and see what happens. There we go. Now it's starting to pick up some energy. I'm going to give this a couple seconds and just to see what's going to happen here. Let's pull this out. And it is starting. It's very light and faint. Make sure we got a good connection on there. Let's try this again. So the way you could tell it's working is because it is fizzing. Let's put that on there, make sure we got a good connection. There we go. So what it's doing is it's transferring the nickel onto the steel currently. We're also going to do the brass. Every part that's going to be nickeled will be done. And it looks like this might take a little bit longer than I thought. There we go. And it's going. There we go. Yeah, so it is working. I'm not going to bore you with sitting here the entire time, but you can see on that spot there, it is starting to collect. The sides are starting to go. Yes, that side was polished, but it's starting to bite on there and actually give it that nickel color. So I'm going to leave this in the solution for a little while, and then we'll get this part done, and we'll come right back to the rest of the parts as soon as they're done. I'll show you what we've done. Stand by and wait for the next round. Alright, I got most of the parts nickeled now. I've got all the steel parts done. I've got the brass parts done. They came out pretty good. To be truthful, this is my very first time doing this on any firearm. So I'm learning quite a bit from doing this. Some of it's coming out real nice. And I've also noticed that there are some spots that are I've got little spots that are flaking off, so probably down the road I'll do this again. But for now, this is working really well. These are really bright, but from handling them and moving them back and forth, they're a little dirty. So what I'm going to do is one final step. I'm taking my screws and I'm putting them in niter salts, and we're going to fire blue them. So here's what they look like with the color. Hopefully you can see okay. It's kind of hard to see, but they are currently in the blue. It's the caustic blue that they normally come in. I'm taking that off with sandpaper and I'm putting it in niter salts and then heating it up until it becomes kind of that fiery red blue. As soon as it reaches that point, take it out, quench it, and it's done. So what I'm going to do is finish those screws. I'm going to put this whole thing back together and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. All right, here's the finished product. I polished the sides of the hammer too to kind of blend in with the frame, and I think it turned out pretty nice. This is my first time doing this, doing a nickel plating job. There are some flaws in this, but for a working gun, something I'm going to play with, I think it turned out real nice. I tried to accent the screws a little bit with the fire blue. Of course, the nickel plating on the outside. There's the other side. Took off the markings on the pistol, which basically said Pieta. If you take these off, they're supposed to be remarked on the frame. They're underneath the grip here now, so there's no way to pretend that this is Civil War era. Plus, they never made these in the Civil War brass frame 44s, so took that off, and then on the other side, it said for black powder only. Took that off, and it cleaned up the gun real nice. So there it is. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them in the comments below. And as always, I look forward to seeing you next time. And please like and subscribe. Thanks again for hanging out. We'll see you next round.